Hi, and welcome to the show, Your Inside Power. I am your guest host, Patricia Stepler, and I welcome you to start to understand the powers that you have inside of you to create the life that you truly want. My question today is, what would you do with $1 million? Now, $1 million sounds like a lot of money, but really, is it? Depending on where you live, I know where my one daughter lives. $1 million, most of the houses in her development, just average size houses, not like mansions or anything, are 800,000 or more. So $1 million isn't necessarily that much money. It just sounds like a lot. Everybody wants to be this millionaire and have all this money. But what Earl Nightingale said, let me quote this to you: most people think that they want more money than they really do, and they settle for a lot less than they could earn. Now, think about that. Most people think they want more than they really do. I talked to somebody recently, and their dream was to be a billionaire. And I thought, well, first you got to start with making your first million before you can start thinking about a billionaire, because our mind doesn't think in that terms. When we think a billionaire seems so far beyond the realm of possibility that we don't even consider it much. But listen to what he says. Most people think they want more money than they really do. And here's the important thing, they settle for a lot less than they could earn. I say most people do settle for less than they really could earn because they don't think big enough. Now, like I said, billion may be too much, but let's think bigger than where we're at. Here's what happens to most people. We tend to react to things. We live our lives through our senses, and that's how we take in information about the world. And yet, it causes us to react to situations instead of using the gifts that we have been given inside of our minds to think and learn to respond. When we stop a minute and decide not to react and then respond, we are really starting to get somewhere in our lives. Now, I can say that because I used to be a person who reacted all the time. In fact, I remember a lady at work that I worked with, she'd say, oh, your curls just start to move when you get upset. Because I was reacting, I was letting my emotions take over. Instead of looking at a situation, thinking about how it could be improved and responding in a way that showed thinking. Now, I could tell the difference when I had a boss who said to me one time, I like the way you think. That was the biggest compliment anybody could have ever given me. I like the way you think, because that meant I went from reacting to responding. So let's talk about the law of compensation. The law of compensation, first you have to be doing something that there's a need to do. Now, in this ever-changing world, and they keep talking with AI and how it's going to eliminate a lot of jobs, and it may very well do that. But here's the thing. Look back 100 years, and there are a lot of jobs that were around and abundant 100 years ago that are no longer necessary today. And I think that's what's going to happen with AI. That yes, some jobs will be eliminated or lessened to a great deal, but there's going to be other jobs created. And there are going to be other things that people need to do. And that's just the way it is. I remember when I went to college, and this would have been back in, I graduated in the late 70s. So I went to college in the early 80s. And I remember that at that time, it seemed like women went into three occupations primarily: teaching, nursing, or being a secretary. And when I look at my classmates and those who went to college, that's pretty much what most of them did. They either became a nurse or a teacher, or they, remained pretty much in the area where I grew up, and they did secretarial or retail or things like that. And those were the primary jobs for women. Back then, most women didn't go on to be these great executives. Now, some did, because we have some, and they're about my age that do that, but that was not the majority of people. So there has to be a need for what you do, and then it's your ability to do it. How good are you at what you do? And that's something you can control. You can't necessarily control the world changing and whether there's a need for what you do, but you can control your ability to do whatever job you choose. And then the third one is, how easy is it to replace you? And you see, if you're very good at what you do, it becomes very difficult to replace you. So that's the laws of compensation. Focus on your ability. Focus on the gifts that you have been given. And think about what opportunities there are to utilize those gifts. Now, if you really want to be truly wealthy, one thing that Bob Proctor taught me was that truly wealthy people have multiple sources of income. And he showed me the different ways to have that income. You see, most people use strategy 1, and an M1 strategy, a money strategy, that's used by 94 to 96% of the population, is to get a job, to generally work for somebody else, maybe have your own business, but the type of business where it is like a job. And that's the strategy most people use. They exchange their time, and we all have 24 hours a day. They exchange time for money. Now, it's used by 96% of the people, but most of those people don't end up earning $1 million a year. So the next strategy is to invest. So money strategy number 2 is invest. The only problem with investing is, first, you need the money to invest the money. It's a very good strategy. It's utilized by about 3% of the people. Now, a lot of people use this strategy to build their retirement funds, and that's a very good thing to do. But there are some people who use this money strategy, investing in other businesses, investing in other things, as a way to earn more money. Think of Shark Tank. Those people are always investing in other businesses, and they're earning money as they go. And then the third way is used by 1% of the people, and that's multiple sources of income. Think of Shark Tank again. They have multiple sources of income because they invest in other businesses. They have their own businesses, and they probably have, well, Shark Tank would be one thing that they're making money off of. And, they probably have books and things like that. So there's all kinds of multiple sources of income that wealthy people have. Today, in today's world, it has never been easier to have multiple sources of income. Think of Etsy. Think of selling on Amazon. There are lots of ways that you can do that. Joint ventures with people, having your own side gig as well as your own job that you might have. You could be involved in all 3 of those ways of earning money. And it's a very good thing to have multiple sources. Why? Because if one goes bad, you have something else to rely on. And then you don't have to worry about whether AI is going to take care of your a particular job or your business, because you have other sources of income. So it's a really good thing to do. If you want to know more information, please contact me and we'll sit down and talk and figure out how we can find you different ways to have multiple sources of income. In fact, I challenge you to just take a piece of paper and try to come up with 15 different ways that you can have income coming into your bank account. And some of them may be large amounts of income, others may be very, very small. But there are multiple sources, and you can expand those small ones to become larger if you so choose. But think of 15 ways that you could have more sources of income. Why don't most people do this? Because it's their paradigm. And we've talked about paradigm. And if you haven't heard me talk about paradigm, look back in some of the previous episodes, because a paradigm is simply habitual thought patterns. And the reason most people don't do this is because they've never been taught. Now, if your father was somebody super wealthy, like Andrew Carnegie or Bill Gates or something like that, you probably have been trained, your mind's trained to think of different ways that you can produce income from about anything you see. And the ideas start coming to you at all times. But most people haven't been trained to do that. They have been taught in school to go out and get a job. Go to college, get a job. I remember as a teacher, that's what we told our students. go to college, get a good education, and get a job. We didn't teach them how to create wealth. And what a shame that is. Well, why not? Well, most teachers are doing that income strategy number one. They're exchanging their time for money, and they've never been taught how to produce multiple sources of income. So that's part of our thinking, part of our paradigms, part of our habitual makeup. So what I want you to do is to keep adding other sources, keep adding them up and figuring out how you can have multiple sources of income. I talked to a lady not too long ago, and she had multiple different multi-level marketing business, plus she wanted to start a coaching business. And she was gearing herself up for those multiple sources of income, answering multiple questions for people. Now, sometimes you might want to concentrate on one for a while until you get it going and get it profitable before you dip your toe into some other adventure. That just helps you to be more consistent and to gain more income immediately, rather than dividing your time between so many different sources at the same time. But you can be prosperous. Anybody here in the United States can be prosperous. In North America, we can be prosperous because we have that freedom. And so it comes down to not a matter of whether you can be prosperous, but whether you choose to be prosperous, because it is a choice. It is a decision you need to make. And when you make that decision, or if you want help making that decision, again, reach out to me. But prosperity builders, time, we only have 24 hours a day. We cannot do everything. Sometimes we can give of our time to causes, but other times we have to have the money. And that's why money can become so important, because you can do more with giving generously to a charity than maybe you have time to invest in that charity. So we only have those 24 hours. You have to figure out how you're going to utilize your 24 hours a day in order to become the prosperous person that you want. And I'm not just talking prosperity and money. You know, if you get to the end of your life and all you've done is had money and you have no relationships, or you've broken your relationships with your family and friends, have you had a prosperous life? So we're talking about prosperity in all areas: spiritual prosperity, health prosperity, wealth prosperity, relationship prosperity. Every avenue that you want to venture into, you can be prosperous at. So don't just think of this as money and that all I'm talking about is money. The reason I talk about money is because most of my clients are wanting to earn more money to live the lifestyle that they choose to live, instead of the lifestyle that they are confined to live because of the income they have. So energy. Do you have the energy to multiply into the purposes that you want? Sometimes it may take you shifting the energy. You see, the energy is around us all the time. Energy goes to and through us every minute of the day. How are you picking up on that energy? Are you just kind of walking through, just kind of like an Eeyore moving through life? Or are you involved in it and you are becoming the person you want to be, and you have the energy to do the things? Now, I know for myself, you can't be up here all the time. I know I'm kind of like really excited today because I'm so enthused about what I'm sharing with you. But I'm not always that way. And there are times that I feel discouraged, but I do not allow myself to stay in that discouragement for very long. Because when I feel that I'm in a very low vibration, I have low energy, I know I need to do something to shift it, because I'm not going to accomplish what I need to accomplish that day or that week that I need to if I allow myself to remain in that low energy. So I have different techniques and different things that I do to shift my energy, so I become able to take the inspired actions that I need to accomplish my goals. Next thing you need to do is you need to find the people and the resources that will help you. Find the mentors, find the coaches. I would certainly help you. I may not be the right coach for you. If I'm not, I have a wealth of array of people around me that I can certainly help you find the person or the resources that will help you the most. Next thing, you have to have a desire. You have to have a drive for wealth. And again, whatever area of wealth you want, it could be health, it could be relationships, but you have to have a desire to keep moving when discouragement and obstacles get in your way. And like I said, when I have an obstacle or discouragement, I don't allow it to impact me for very long. And by very long, I mean half a day max. Usually it isn't even that long. It might be an hour, it might be 30 minutes that I allow myself to kind of dwell in the disappointment of what happened. And then I look at it and I look for the opportunity, because with every discouragement, there's also an opportunity. And I do believe that. And I've seen it happen too many times to not believe it. Next thing, self-confidence. Do you have the confidence? I didn't always have this confidence. If you'd have told me 5 years ago that I was going to be doing a TV show and a podcast and all these things, I'd have said, no, that's not me. I don't have the confidence. You can build your own self-confidence. Believe it or not, I used to be a very shy person. In fact, I can remember going to a matrix with Bob Proctor and sitting at a table. And I'm one of those people that I like to think before I just blurb out and speak. And so I'd be sitting there and I'd be thinking while other people would be jumping into a conversation. And I remember one time that we were going around the table and they asked for my opinion. I gave my opinion. And later on, the lady I was rooming with in the hotel, she said to me, "You have some really good ideas. You need to speak up more often." And I thought, I don't get a chance because I don't just blurt out. And, you know, it's sometimes you have to realize that, you have to have the confidence to share what you need to share. And I have learned to speak out a little bit more because I do have that tendency to be shy and to sit back and wait. So I've had a great deal of confidence building in the last few years. And then you have to follow through. You have to expect the good to happen and be able to follow through on the things that you need to do and have that goal all mapped out. Now, when you map out a goal, you might figure out a path that you think it's going to take. Understand that the path that you have set may not be the right path. And that's okay because you don't know everything. The universe knows everything, but you don't. And so the universe may have a better way to help you get your goal or get beyond that goal to something that's even more miraculous and marvelous than you could have ever expected. So you have to allow yourself the flexibility to wait for that opportune moment and that opportune event that could happen that could change your life. So keep in mind that this may seem a little overwhelming, the thought of having multiple sources of income, of having all these things to do and to keep this energy up and so on and so forth. But think about this. When you drive a car, you can think about driving the car. You can be having a conversation with somebody, eating and making sure the kids are okay in the backseat. You can do it all at the same time. When you can do things like that, you can have multiple sources of income going and you can have a way to manage them all. It just takes a little bit of organization. It just takes a little bit of excitement and drive that you are going to need to accomplish these big goals. So that's the same process that you do when you drive and have all those other tasks going on as it is when you have multiple sources of income. Now, this is a equation. Real wealth equals ideas plus energy. So if you really want to have real wealth, and again, in any area of your life, real wealth is ideas plus energy. And you are going to need the ideas and you are going to need some energy. So set a really big goal, as what we call a C-type goal, a goal that you don't know how to achieve, but it's what you really want. A-type goals, you know how to do them because you've already done it. B-type goals are if this goes right, that goes right, and this goes right, you're going to accomplish it. But C-type goal, you don't necessarily know anything about how you're going to get there. You have a plan in mind, but you have to allow the opportunities to come to you. Just like my son, and encourage you to go back and listen to the episode about what my son did to earn a scholarship to college. He thought he had the plan, but he didn't understand us. Neither did I at the time, understand how the universe works. He set this massive goal of getting a full scholarship to college, and he had to allow the universe to find him the right path because he didn't have the right path. He thought he did. In his mind, he had the right path. But when it didn't turn out, he had to realize that there was another way. So set that big goal. And now what will often happen is you will hit that terror barrier. And the terror barrier happens because you have this idea. You have something that you want, but for a long time, maybe it's just been in your conscious mind. You haven't really worked on it. It's just more like a wish or a dream, and it's just there. But as soon as you start to think about it and you start to contemplate how it might happen, and you start to set those milestones along the way as to how to get there, and you start to map out a path, all hell breaks loose and you hit that terror barrier. And that terror barrier is the fear that you have because now this idea is something you want to do. Now, the body does the actions. You think about it, and then your body will move into action. And what's happening is when you're in that terror, you want it, but subconsciously it's in conflict with everything, all those paradigms you've built. And it might be, I want to start my own business, but all you've ever had is a job. And in that fear of leaving that job overcomes you. And so you have this conflict and all this terror. And what happens is if you hit that terror barrier and you bounce off and you keep doing that all over and over again, pretty soon you quit trying. What you have to do is when that happens and you have that conflict going on, you have to find a way to move through that terror and to get to the other side. And I don't care if you have to go over that barrier or under it, or right through it, dig a hole, but you have to figure out a way to get through the terror. And once you do that, it doesn't mean you're never going to have hit a terror barrier again. What it means is that now you realize that you can do it. And that's a confidence builder. And so now you have a little more confidence that the next time you have that terror, you can go back and say, well, gee, I did it before. I can do it again. This used to happen to me all the time with new software programs or social media, something new, something I was not familiar with. And I would get to the point where I was almost in tears. And I didn't know how to do it. And it just frustrated me to no end. And then I'd figure it out. And then the next time, same thing, I'd get almost in tears, or sometimes I would actually have tears, and I'd be afraid of doing it. And then I'd realize I could do it. And you know what happens now? I look at something, I was looking at a new program last month, and I started watching some videos, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just way too complicated. I can't do it. And then I kept watching the videos and watching the videos, and I'm thinking, well, it's the same thing all over again. It's just a matter of learning it. And you know what? I've gotten to the point where I know I can figure it out. It may take work, it may be frustrating, but I know I can figure it out because I've gone through that terror. And I know that even though I may feel super overwhelmed with a new program or new software that I'm working with, doesn't mean I can't figure it out. And so that's just that confidence builder. But we've been so conditioned in our lives to believe that we can't do certain things, that we're not good enough, that we're not able. And we need to get rid of that. And when you start to think and you start to control your own thought patterns, you can shift your paradigms and you can become the person that you want to be. So power flows to and through you. That conditioning that you have controls the vibration you're in. So you may have to change the conditioning. You may have to change it so that you're in a different vibration. And you think thoughts that are in harmony with your conditioning. Again, you may have to start changing that conditioning. Thoughts, when they become comfortable and you're in that comfort zone, it's really bondage. If you think of being in a box, you know, in your comfort zone or your comfort box, You're in bondage when you're there. The only way you're going to get towards freedom and get towards the desire that you want is to break through of that box and get rid of that box. And there's no way you can win without changing what you're doing now and without getting rid of being in that bondage. As long as you remain in your comfort zone, you are going to remain in bondage. You have to change something. So as long as your idea, that wish, just stays in your conscious mind, nothing's going to happen. You have to start acting on it. You have to start moving towards it and allowing that feeling of confusion and that feeling of anxious to exist so that you can break through of that comfort and of that bondage. Keep in mind that anytime we get outside of our comfort zone, there is going to be a little bit of terror that enters our life. Joseph Campbell said this: "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. See, we all want something more. That's human nature. If you don't want something more out of life, that's conditioning that's probably been put there by other people around you. Because as human beings, we're here to expand, explore. Why do you think the world keeps changing? The world keeps changing and we have all these improvements because that's the way it's supposed to be. Da Vinci had pictures of how an airplane worked. He just didn't have the know-how. It's not like there's been new things that were not elements that were here when Da Vinci existed. We've just figured out how to combine them to make an airplane that flies. But the idea was there. He just didn't know how to act upon it. And the cave you fear to enter. How many times have you been afraid to do something that may be exactly what you need to do in order to accomplish that desire, accomplish that goal? I've heard 3 different people over the last probably dozen years tell me about inventions that they had made, but they never took the step to get them mass produced or to get the rights to that invention, and somebody else did and made a ton of money. So what is it that we're afraid to do? You see, when you have that idea and you give everything and you bet on that idea and you dedicate your life to it, it's got to happen. It has to. That's the way the law works. Everything happens at the right time for the right person. Everything happens at the right time for the right person for the right reason. Keep that in mind. You are working with spirit. You know, when we talk about a higher power, we talk about God, or, we talk about infinite intelligence, as Napoleon Hill called it. We are talking about spirit, and spirit is there for you, but spirit's going to give you what you want. So if you are very positive, it's going to give you back what it is that you want. If you become very negative, it's going to give you back that too. Now, I want you to keep in mind that strange and marvelous things will begin to happen with constant regularity when ideas and thinking become part of your life. For more information, please check out my site, book that free appointment that you'll see in the information, and let's get you on the right path to success and freedom and overcoming your terror barrier. This is Patricia Stepler with your Inside Power. Make it a great day.